So what you see behind me used to be a 2-car garage door, but now it is a wall. And why on earth would I go to the trouble of walling in my 2-car garage door? And the most simple explanation is that garages are not meant to have cars parked in them, so there's really no need for the door. At least that's what I've been telling my wife. In my previous shop, I did the exact same thing that I'm gonna talk about and show you how I did it in this video to my single car garage door. However, in this shop, I decided to go a little bit different, and I left the single car garage door operational, and I decided to wall in the 2-car garage door, and a lot of that has to do with the layout of my shop and where my assembly table and everything is. So now I'm gonna give you an inside look to the process, and I'm gonna start with everything already being framed out, and I'm gonna show you some of the different ways and some of the construction methods that I used for this wall, and then I'll close it out by showing you how I finished everything, and then I'm gonna talk about why I chose some of the materials that I chose. So let's get into it. Basically what you have here is just a standard frame with a couple of small minor tweaks, and that's all based off the garage door behind it. So here I followed, traditional 16 inches on center. These are all 2x4s. As you can see, I've got some rock wool insulation. This is the rock wool Safe and Sound. And I primarily did this not so much for the insulation properties, because as you can see back here, in my previous video, I talked about installing the insulation on the garage doors. Well, I did that, but I also did this. And the main reason that I added this to it is because I wanted to help block some of that noise from going out this thin metal door. Even though this is gonna help a little bit, this is going to help a lot. And to do this entire wall, it took me 2 packs, 2 bundles of the Safe and Sound. So just to give you an idea if this is something that you want to do as well. Now I said that these right here are all standard 2x4s. They're cut to length, dependent on my garage door, which is a pretty common garage door size. The bottom runner right here is also a 2x4, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. And then the top and the sides are both 2x8s. And the purpose for the top and the sides being 2x8s is because I needed it to be pushed out because of all the railing on the actual garage door that you see right here. I couldn't have these directly up against it and then have this flush against the wall and be able to tie it in. So you have to have a board wide enough to actually push it out some. I brought you into the middle here so you can see the middle portion of this, because this is kind of important, right? So each one of these sections is 8 foot long. You add the 2x4 on the exterior portion, which you can't see it in the video here, but basically instead of having 2x8s in the center, I needed to have 2x4s for the reasons I talked about just a minute ago. But when you add all the end pieces and everything, it gives just over 16 feet total for both of them combined. But what ended up happening is I had to make 2 different frames because it's a double door. The single door, I was able to just do it with one. But because this is too long, I had to make it, 2 separate frames and put them in here. Well, when I did that, I had about 3/4 of an inch or so left in the middle. So what I actually did, and I planned for this, I actually bought an additional 2x4 based on the measurements that I had. I knew that this would push it out just, good enough. So I basically separated the 2 slightly just to fit that 2x4 in. And then I screwed this 2x4 into the first frame. And then I basically put long screws through to join the 2. So it's 2 separate frames, and then they're put together, and it's super sturdy. It's rock solid. So I wanted to bring you to the side here so you could see the 2x8 and explain how I have this attached to the wall on the sides. The main strength is actually coming where it's attached on the top, which I'll show you here in just a moment. But for this part, all I really had to do is just drive a couple of long screws in through the side into the stud here for the actual framing on the house. What you see right here on this framework here for the garage door is an L bracket. And so basically an L bracket is attached to the top of this and to this. And so first I attach it to this, and then I'm able to screw it nice and tight up to the wall there. And just to give you a better visual, this is what I was just referring to at the top. So you have screws going down at the top of the frame and then screws going into the framework on the actual wall. These are just Simpson strong tie. They cost like $2.50 or something like that a piece. But I used these on the last shop and I used them again here. And now I'll quickly show you all 4 points where it is attached. All right, so I'm gonna try to do this and move the camera as I do it, but you can see on that vertical beam there, you can see the top of it. So that's one side of one frame. Then you come over here in the center, and on the ends of each frame, it goes into those 2 vertical beams. And then you come down here where I was just showing you, and there it's attached as well. So this is another area where I wanted to get close up. I posted about this on Instagram, and everybody was freaking out saying that my wood was going to rot because the wood's not supposed to be touching the floor. It's not touching the floor at all. And there's a couple of reasons why I did that, but the biggest reason I did it is because it's actually got about 2 inches. What you see right here is just the space before it drops down. I do get some water intrusion, but it's on that lower portion, and obviously I don't want that water seeping up into the 2x4 here. So let me show you on the side how I mitigated that and how I kept it off the ground a little bit. So what I did is I used carriage bolts, a similar technique to anytime I'm trying to level something. So it gave me the benefit of not only getting it level, but also keeping it elevated until I was able to get it screwed into place. So at no point is any water going to touch the framework, so I'm never going to have to worry about any kind of rot. And the other thing that this allows is airflow to continue to go under there so it does dry that water. So that is how I went about making sure that no water was going to touch the frame. Let's talk about how I went about adding the skins to the exterior portion. I used 4x8 sheets of 1/2 inch MDF, but to cut these to the desired height, all I did was took my track saw, cut them to the appropriate length, and then I moved them over to the wall. With the skins, I also decided to leave about a 1/4 inch gap. So not only is the frame not touching the ground, but I also didn't want the MDF touching the ground. Once I had my pieces cut, I just took them over to the wall, and I would attach these the same way I would attach something like drywall or plywood, and that is simply by screwing the MDF into the studs. I used a shellac-based primer, and I used 2 coats of the same paint I used in the rest of the shop. So the benefit to using a shellac-based primer on MDF is that not only does it dry insanely fast, but it also does not cause the same swelling issues that a water-based primer would. And this is the shellac-based primer by Zinsser, which can be bought at any local Home Depot or Lowe's. And finally, to paint the wall, I used 2 coats of the same color that I used in this shop and my previous shop. And again, for those of you that are wondering, the color that I chose for this shop and the previous shop is a color called Agreeable Gray from Sherwin-Williams. So you just saw that I used MDF for the skin of the door. And the million-dollar question is, why did I choose MDF over drywall or, let's say, plywood? And there's a few reasons for that. And I alluded to this when I talked about the safe and sound insulation that I used. Well, there's a big thing that I was trying to accomplish, not only by giving myself more wall space that I can use for things like, hanging my dry erase board or hanging my tracks, attaching my desk collection, all of that. It's all going to be a great benefit to this. But I use the safe and sound mainly because I wanted to block a lot of the noise going out. And the reason why I added the MDF on the outside of that is because MDF is extremely dense. And one of the best ways to block sound is by adding mass and adding density to stop that noise from traveling through. Additionally, I knew I was going to be painting it, and MDF is just an absolutely fantastic material. If you're going to paint it, it gives a nice smooth finish. And again, this is temporary. This is not meant to be a finished portion of my house. I'm not trying to sell this place anytime soon, hopefully. So I don't need people to come in here and go, oh wow, there's a drywalled wall in front of the garage door. That looks amazing. It makes no difference. It's a shop. I needed a temporary solution. And the reason I didn't use drywall or plywood, one, plywood is just crazy expensive right now, so MDF is a much cheaper alternative. And I used 1/2 inch MDF, which is even less expensive than 3/4 inch. And with drywall, to be honest with you, it would have probably been a much cheaper route, but I wanted nothing to do with the finish process for the drywall. So with the 1/2 inch MDF, with the safe and sound insulation, with the garage door insulation, it is cut down dramatically on the noise transmission from the shop through that 2-car garage door. So everything that I wanted to accomplish, I accomplished by going this route. If you guys want to do something similar, by all means, use whatever material you want. Now, the question that everybody always wants to know is, well, if you're hanging stuff on that wall, why would you use the MDF versus the plywood? Obviously, the plywood's going to have better screw holding power, but quite frankly, if I'm hanging something on that wall that's of any weight, even if it had plywood on it, I'm still always going to find a stud to make sure that I'm screwing into the stud, not just the plywood. So with that logic, whether I used plywood or any other material, it really doesn't matter because I would still use the studs. So the material that's on top of that is kind of irrelevant at that point. Okay, so that is my 2-car garage door wall. Again, that is temporary for my new shop. I'm very glad that I did it. I will never have any need or any use for that 2-car garage door. And in the event that I ever needed to use it, I would still have to get a garage door opener put on it because I've removed everything else off of it. So it's completely unusable, but it is also completely reversible. Hopefully you guys found that helpful. If there's anything that I did not answer or you have questions based on the video, please don't hesitate to leave them down in the comments section below. As always, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Until next time, get out in the shop, try something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.